Israeli airstrikes kill 22 people and injure more than 100 in central Beirut. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres condemns the gunfire directed at a UNIFIL position in southern Lebanon. And Israeli occupation forces launch airstrikes and artillery attacks on northern Gaza, killing at least 130 people. It's 4 p.m. Cairo local time, and you are now watching Q News. Let's start our bulletin with the latest developments in Lebanon.
كل المستهدفين هن مدنيين.
وضع شيء مرعب، شيء بخوف.
Israeli airstrikes have killed 22 people and injured more than 100 in central Beirut. The strikes hit a densely populated residential neighborhood of apartments and small shops. No evacuation warnings were given before the attack, and it's the first time the area has been targeted. Rescue operations and efforts to clear the rubble are still ongoing. Thick smoke has risen over southern Lebanon as Israeli occupation forces intensified their strikes in the region. The escalation marks a sharp shift in Israel's operations, with ground troops now entering southern Lebanon and airstrikes targeting the capital Beirut. This latest development has highlighted tensions following weeks of increased military activity in Lebanon. Israel's actions have drawn international concern as fears of a broader regional conflict grow amidst the ongoing hostilities. Lebanon's Prime Minister Najib Mikati has asked the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to call on the UN Security Council to vote on a resolution asking for an immediate and full ceasefire. Mikati says that the government is committed to the full implementation of UN Resolution 1701, adding that the government is ready to deploy the Lebanese army in the border areas in southern Lebanon. UN Deputy Spokesperson Farhan Haq has reiterated that UN premises are inviolable following repeated attacks on UN peacekeepers' headquarters and nearby positions in southern Lebanon. Haq stressed that under the 1946 Convention on the Privileges and Immunities of the United Nations, Israel is obligated to honor and respect this inviolability, which is not subject to any qualifications, limitations, or expectations.
Peacekeepers remain in a hospital. In a separate incident, Israeli Defense Force soldiers also fired on UN position 131 in Labune.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has condemned the gunfire directed at a UNIFIL position in southern Lebanon. Guterres stated that such incidents cannot be tolerated, emphasizing that firing on a UNIFIL site is a violation of international law. He also urged the international community to protect peacekeeping forces and to make every effort to prevent a full-scale war in Lebanon, as well as to avoid escalating tensions in the Middle East to prevent a deterioration of global security.
It's close to 2,000, and we see already 170,000 people fleeing to Syria. We see more than
Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has condemned Israel's attacks on UN forces in Lebanon and urged the international community to stop selling weapons to the Israeli military. Sanchez denounced the Israeli army for firing on peacekeepers, injuring two, and stressed that such attacks are a serious violation of international humanitarian law and UN Security Council Resolution 1701.
Algo absolutamente condenable, rechazable y que sirve para recordarnos la urgencia de acabar con la...
A Chinese envoy has strongly condemned the recent Israeli attacks on UN positions in Lebanon and called for a full investigation. Fu Kong, China's permanent representative to the UN, expressed grave concerns about the situation in Lebanon. He emphasized that any deliberate attack on peacekeepers is a serious violation of international humanitarian law and UN Security Council Resolution 1701 and must be stopped immediately.
我们要求对事件进行调查、追责，并采取措施，杜绝再次发生。
The US and France have emphasized that strengthening Lebanon's army is crucial for implementing a key UN Security Council resolution aimed at maintaining peace along the country's border with Israel. Deputy US Ambassador Robert Wood stated at a meeting of the 15-member Security Council that the international community must prioritize efforts to bolster Lebanese state institutions. French UN Ambassador Nicolas de Rivière also called for an immediate ceasefire, reaffirming that the proposal for a 21-day truce put forward by France and the US last month remains on the table.
In the Lebanese armed forces. And so, the international community must focus its efforts accordingly, helping strengthen...
Italian Defense Minister Guido Crosetto has condemned Israeli forces for shooting at positions used by UN peacekeepers in Lebanon, describing it as a possible war crime. Crosetto stated that he has contacted his Israeli counterpart to protest the actions and has summoned the Israeli ambassador to Italy to demand an explanation, which has not yet been provided. Italy has traditionally contributed a significant number of troops to UNIFIL, and although none of its contingents were injured this week, Crosetto emphasized that these Israeli actions will not be accepted.
Non giustificate da alcuna necessità militare.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has stated that it is primarily up to the Lebanese people to determine the future of their country. Speaking in the Latvian capital after attending the ASEAN East Asia Summit, Blinken reiterated Washington's commitment to diplomacy in addressing the situation. However, he emphasized that the fundamental decisions on how to proceed belong to the Lebanese people.
It's not supposed to be the case. Remember, Israel was in southern Lebanon for a long time, 18 years, and it got out in 2000.
The International Organization for Migration is calling for increased international support to assist in evacuating the rising number of stranded migrants in Lebanon. The country hosts at least 177,000 migrant workers. As Israeli strikes intensify, many are struggling to find safety. Numerous foreign workers have been left homeless, abandoned by their employers, and turned away from local shelters, prioritizing displaced Lebanese nationals. Israeli occupation forces airstrikes on Lebanon have intensified, displacing 1.2 million people, killing over 2,000 and severely damaging Beirut's infrastructure, raising humanitarian concerns. For more, here's the details.
Israeli media and government statements have asserted that Israeli forces are targeting Hezbollah's military infrastructure in Lebanon. The broader objective of these strikes appears to be the destruction of Lebanon's infrastructure. These developments align with initial comments from the United States at the onset of Israel's ground offensive in Lebanon. Israeli occupation forces have reportedly struck over 2,000 Hezbollah-related targets, including military facilities and tunnels. U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin and Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant emphasized the necessity of dismantling Hezbollah's offensive capabilities while reaffirming Israel's right to self-defense. In contrast, Lebanese officials have raised alarms about the severe humanitarian consequences of these military actions. Caretaker Minister of Information Ziad al-Makkari revealed that approximately 1.2 million people have been displaced, exacerbating an already fragile economic and infrastructural situation. The toll includes over 2,000 fatalities and more than 10,000 injuries. Beirut's governor, Marwan Aboud, reported significant damage to buildings and infrastructure in the capital that has drastically altered the city's landscape. He noted that schools are currently housing displaced families, disrupting the academic year, and the local trade has halted. Streets and fields are crowded with displaced people as the city's crisis further compounds.
And for more analysis, we now move to Rana in our newsroom. To you, Rana.
Thank you so much, Hera. And for further analysis on the escalating tensions in Lebanon, we're joined by Strategic General Pilot Bassem Yassin on Qnews. Welcome, Mr. Yassin.
Hello, how are you? I'm good.
It's our utmost pleasure, sir. Sir, in light of yesterday's UN Security Council session on the Middle East, what are your thoughts on Israel's statements about its intention to achieve a ceasefire and adherence to the Council's decisions regarding Lebanon, contingent on the lifting of Iran's influence?
Yes, France and United States have put some power on the Israelis to make a ceasefire for 21 days, and still this offer is on the table, but still Israel oppose this issue. Lebanon has agreed on that and request the ceasefire first, and then go and negotiate all other items that's on the table. But we still have the Israel not approve this. They are referring to achieve something on the ground in order to come to negotiation with the strong paper on the table. For sure, what happens this month is very tragic, and no one here is talking about the influence of Iran because the issue has passed the influence of any country. Now it's like for the Lebanese and for the Israelis, it's surviving. The Israelis want to return their people to the north, and for the Lebanese, we need to end this conflict once and forever in a way that somebody has to make all the influence from Israel not to attack Lebanon any time in the future. So it's very complicated.
So exactly. So, sir, the American website Axios published a report indicating a reapproachment between Netanyahu and Biden regarding a potential response to Iran. How do you assess the likelihood of the Israeli government following through with the agreement with the United States to prevent the outbreak of a major regional war, sir?
Yeah, the problem is there's not enough influence from the states to Israel that prevents or diffuse the problem between Israel and Iran. They are trying to make some retaliation as light as it could be in order not to escalate the problem in the Middle East. But, 1 month to the American election, so the influence of the Americans is so light and is so little. I don't think that the Israeli government will comply what is called the pressure from the American on the Israelis. There's only one way, is to stop the ammunition and and the weapons supply to Israel, that this...
and do you think, sir, that the United States will ever stop the ammunition and the military weapons that it is providing Israel with?
Yeah, it should be like this. You know, when you say to the Israelis, if you don't answer what we are asking for, there's a way to put the pressure on the Israelis by stopping the supply of arms and ammunition. But if they didn't, and they keep supplying it without making enough pressure on the Israelis will continue on what they are doing on both Lebanon and Gaza, and especially they are preparing for the retaliation to Iran, and that could lead a major problem in the Middle East.
Sir, what is your comment on the failure of Israel's Security Cabinet to reach an agreement on a potential response to Iran during this session that extended into the early hours of this morning?
Please repeat the question because I don't hear it well.
Sir, what is your comment on the failure of Israel's Security Cabinet to reach an agreement on a potential response to Iran during the session that extended into the early hours of this morning?
Yeah, I've heard there's a meeting for the Council of Ministers, and what I understand that they approved the response to Iran, but what's not clear what kind of response they are doing it. And we hope that will not lead to a major problem that will escalate the area of the Middle East area, all of it.
Sir, finally, what is Israel starving to achieve at this point?
What we are seeking is a ceasefire now, okay? And then we can come to the negotiation table and try to resolve all the issues. The ceasefire is very fundamental and very necessary for all the parties, except for the Israelis. They
Are you
want
optimistic,
to
sir, at this point that a ceasefire is imminent?
Yes, okay. Ceasefire related to 1701 resolution could be the start of resolving all these problems. And the 1701 resolution included all the steps that could dissolve the problem between Lebanon and Israel.
That was strategic expert, General Pilot Bassem Yassin. Thank you very much, sir, for your valuable insights. And back to Hannah again.
Thank you very much, Rana. And now we move to the latest developments in Gaza. At least 42,126 people have been killed and 98,117 have been wounded in Israeli occupation attacks on Gaza since last October. Gaza's health ministry added that 61 Palestinians were killed and 231 were wounded in the last 24 hours, reporting period with thousands still missing under the rubble and scattered on the roads. The UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs Deputy Chief Ramesh Rajasingham has declared that Gaza is the most dangerous place where the UN works, with at least 300 humanitarian workers killed in the past year. He noted that essential conditions for effective aid operations are severely lacking or entirely absent. Additionally, Rajasingham mentioned that teams from OCHA and the World Health Organization were unable to reach Kamal Adwan Hospital despite having received a green light from the Israeli occupation forces.
And ultimately, the mission had to be aborted. And that's not an unusual practice. In September, less than 10...
Israeli occupation forces have launched airstrikes and artillery attacks on northern Gaza as part of an ongoing offensive that began 6 days ago. This offensive included an incursion into Jabalia, the largest of Gaza's 8 historic refugee camps, as well as the nearby towns of Beit Hanun and Beit Lahia. Palestinian health officials report that at least 130 people have been killed in the operation, which Israel claims is aimed at preventing Hamas from regrouping. The military has instructed residents to evacuate an area where the UN estimates more than 400,000 people are currently trapped. According to the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, a new round of polio vaccinations in the Gaza Strip is set to begin on October 14th. The second round of polio vaccination will start on October 14th, aiming to vaccinate around 590,000 children under the age of 10. This follows what the WHO reported was a great success in the first round of the vaccination effort in Gaza, which concluded in mid-September and vaccinated around 560,000 children under the age of 10. Russian Defense Minister Andrei Belousov has stated that AI-enabled drones are playing a crucial role on the battlefield in Ukraine and called for increased training for troops on their usage. The ministry released a video footage of Belousov touring a center focused on next-generation drone technologies, where he interacted with drone operators. Belousov revealed that 2 detachments equipped with AI-powered drones have already been deployed in eastern Ukraine, as well as in Russia's Belgorod and Kursk regions. Russia has claimed that its forces attacked multiple military targets in Ukraine, including air defense system launchers. Meanwhile, Ukraine has reported ongoing frontline battles with Russian forces and a strike on an enemy military airfield over the past 24 hours. In a briefing, the Russian Defense Ministry has stated that its forces targeted 2 launchers of the US-made Patriot air defense system, along with a control station and radar set associated with the system. And that brings us to the end of our news bulletin. Here is what we have been covering. Israeli airstrikes killed 22 people and injure more than 100 in central Beirut.
This was just the beginning.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres condemns the gunfire directed at a UNIFIL position in southern Lebanon.
With strikes, heavy bombardments.
And Israeli occupation forces launched airstrikes and artillery attacks on northern Gaza, killing at least 130 people. And this concludes our news bulletin for this hour. Don't forget to follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok. Q News to stay informed. For real-time updates, connect with us on the UMS digital platform. Watch it. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for more updates here on Q News.